My name's Rory MacLean. I'm here in Edinburgh for the second year running. Last year I was here to launch my book Berlin, Imagine a City, which the Washington Post named as the top 10 of 2014. And this year I'm here to launch Back in the USSR, Heroic Adventures in Transnistria, which is a book which I've done with photographer Nick Danziger. And Back in the USSR, it's the story of an unrecognized country, a breakaway region of the former Soviet Union. And it's recognized by no country in the world. It was created by very benevolent retired Red Army generals and KGB officers, and it exists for nefarious activities. Like many people, I'd never heard of Transnistria. It's a tiny country about the size of Cornwall, squeezed between Ukraine and Moldova. But Nick Danziger and I heard a couple of years ago about its Minister of Prisons, who was a former KGB and Red Army officer who had led the tanks, or helped to lead the tanks into Prague in 1968, and who ran a private zoo in the Ministry of Justice in Tiraspol, in the capital. And I thought, this I have to see. An unrecognized country hidden away with a name like Transnistria. So Nick and I traveled there. Well, most writers, of course, it's the nature of the job. We work alone. We sit in the cold water garret for 1, 2, 3 years, creating our great masterpieces. I hadn't given up on that, but I was very lucky to meet and start working with Nick Danziger. And it's so exciting to work with another artist to tell parallel stories, both in visual terms and in literal terms. And we've now worked together on about 4 projects, from North Korea to the former Balkans to Cyprus to Transnistria, the non-existent country. Well, Transnistria is a breakaway republic of the former Soviet Union. It's unrecognized by any other country in the world. Therefore, the people who created it, well, they're former KGB officers, former Red Army officers, and shall we say pluralist democracy is not high on their list of objectives. And so we did meet many interesting people. We met the foreign minister, Nina Shatansky, who is, you see, Transnistria not being officially recognized, has no embassies around the world. So how do you publicize a country that isn't recognized by anyone? You use Facebook. And Nina Shatansky, the foreign minister, posts every day on Facebook about Transnistrian foreign policy, about what the Transnistrian police force are doing, what Transnistrian women are doing. And also she posts and blogs about the best roller skating rink in the country and her favorite cider and things like that. So I think probably the most interesting person we met was Nina Shatansky. I've been lucky enough to come to Edinburgh for many years, and many of the books I've written have been launched here. And in a way, coming to Edinburgh, it's a bit like coming home because of that history. And I love the audiences. The audiences are so welcoming and erudite and enthusiastic. And of course, I know of no other festival which encourages the speakers to have a wee dram before going on stage. It's always welcome.
Well, first of all, I had known about this tiny sliver of a country previously. I was impressed by the audience. It was packed out, and I didn't quite think that would be the case. No, not exactly new, but it certainly was a revival of the problems that are still in that eastern part of can we call it Europe? Perhaps not. But that eastern part is fractured by language displacement due to, of course, the Soviet Union, when it was a collection of countries and language freely moved over the borders. Well, when it broke up, those language groups were still there. And of course, the Ukraine is perhaps our latest sad example of what it can lead to. The future of this sliver of land is also something that I was quite interested, because it seemed to be rather ludicrous in that it didn't have it wasn't a country in the sense of like passports or any of the trappings of a country, and yet it existed. So there had to be some reason. That perhaps was my greatest curiosity. Why had it been left there? It was only left because it was suited to someone. Mr. Putin, for instance, or perhaps Moldova will have an interest in it too, or perhaps they were just ridden over by the larger force of Russia. It's a wonderful institution. It is truly, truly wonderful.
Actually, I found the event quite amusing. The book is also amusing. I'm just wondering what the effect will be at the other end in Tiraspol, but I understand it may not be pleasant. Well, I read the book before coming to the event, so I already knew what it was about. But my background is I actually lived in Moldova for 5 years, back when, just after the breakup of the Soviet Union. So I knew the background to the story anyway. But some of the stories may be apocryphal, they may not, about the corruption and arms race and illegal trafficking of people. But I suspect most of them were true. And then at that time it was pretty well run down. The buildings looked old, decrepit. The people didn't look happy. It was a brief visit because I was living in Moldova and you didn't stay, you went across the day and came back. I read the one where you crossed Afghanistan because I was in Afghanistan too. And so it was very relevant to me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Not a place I would recommend to anyone, but fine. I think this year's festival is going to be one of the best.
I thought it was really, really good. It was really interesting, and I liked how it was a little bit of everything. Like he talked about his book and general things, but also they kind of diverged from the topic sometimes as well, which was really cool because that means you got even more out of it. Well, he's been quite a few places all over the world, and he touched on North Korea, which was super interesting and really shocking as well. And he talked about a couple of his other books, and just general like experiences with Russian. Because I'm studying Russian, and I've looked up things that are kind of relevant to Russia. This is one, and then the next talk I'm going to, I have read the book, and I'm just interested to hear as much as possible about that kind of thing. Generally, I really like the book festival. It's really well organised, and the talks are really good. Like I've always had a good time at the talks, and yeah, I like it.